In this episode, we recount the harrowing tale of a young woman vacationing in Hawaii. As she enjoys snorkeling in the captivating waters a mere 100 yards from the shoreline, a sudden, vicious shark attack robs her of an arm. Amidst her struggles at the water's surface, her desperate cries for aid are picked up by a nearby high school teacher, who, without a second thought, plunges into the treacherous waters. It's only when he's nearing the grievously injured tourist that he realizes the peril he's thrown himself into, now enveloped in a scarlet cloud of danger. Bearing her thrashing body in his arms, he is now potentially the next target on the shark's predatory agenda. Our focus in this episode, Jana Lutteropp, was a 20-year-old young woman who had left the confines of her home in West Germany to work as an au pair in Issaquah, a suburb of Seattle. Tasked with the care of twin toddlers and their slightly older sibling, she found herself yearning for a break after a year of dedicated work. Consequently, she scheduled a vacation to the idyllic landscape of Hawaii. Departing Seattle in August, Jana intended to return to Germany by September. Along with her friends, she decided to visit the less crowded Palauea Beach in Makena, situated on the Hawaiian island of Maui, also referred to as White Rock Beach. With golden sands flanked by imposing volcanic rock to its north and excellent snorkeling opportunities abounding in the nearby rock pools, it was a paradise for marine enthusiasts. Plus, the area was frequented by sea turtles and a vivid array of marine life called the volcanic rocks their home. The beach gently tapered into the water, a feature that made it a preferred swimming spot among the locals, though it remained relatively untouched by the visiting crowds. On a fateful Wednesday in August 2013, Jana immersed herself in the warm, inviting waters. Despite the choppy surface, she was keen on exploring the underwater beauty. She donned her mask and snorkel, slipped on her fins, and plunged her face into the ocean's depths. Though the visibility was somewhat compromised, brightly colored fish danced around in an enchanting display of aquatic life. However, the serene underwater world was soon to be replaced by a scene from a horror story. An uninvited guest, a shark, was lurking in the shallows, scanning for its next meal. Spotting Jana swimming near the surface, 100 yards from the shore, it saw an opportunity. With breathtaking speed, it torpedoed upwards, knocking the breath out of Jana as she was flung into the air. In her disoriented state, Jana felt a powerful pull on her arm. To her horror, she found her entire arm clasped in the jaws of the predator, its snout mere inches from her face. Staring into the eyes of the shark, she experienced a tremendous pressure building in her arm, escalating until it felt as if it would snap. In a dreadful climax, the shark succeeded in severing Jana's arm from her body. As blood gushed into the sea, Jana let out a chilling cry for help. The shark, having completed its brutal attack, submerged beneath the ocean's surface. With her strength waning rapidly due to blood loss, Jana frantically thrashed and kicked, struggling to reach the safety of the shore. The violent attack had left her feeling it was a battle she was not going to win. Her companions on the beach saw her desperate attempts to swim and cried out in terror, but none of them dared to plunge into the blood-infested waters to rescue her. A vacationer from California, 57-year-old Rick Moore, was at the beach with his friend Nicholas Grasafi. They heard Jana's petrifying scream and turned to see her battling for her life 100 yards out, surrounded by a crimson tide of blood. Without a second thought, Rick sprinted into the ocean, swimming as swiftly as he could directly into the bloody aftermath of the attack. As he approached within 10 feet of Jana, he noticed the shocking reality. Her arm had been entirely torn off. He instructed her to hold on to him with her remaining arm while he cradled her head. Then, swimming on his back towards the shore, he pushed through the water to reach dry land. It was a slow but steady journey, with Rick doing his best to calm the terrified woman. Suddenly, the perilous situation they were in fully dawned on him. He was in the shark's territory, carrying a wounded victim through a sea of blood. He was a potential target for the predator, or perhaps even other sharks drawn by the scent of fresh blood. Despite the lurking danger, Rick continued to kick and move towards the shore. All the while, Jana was overcome by a gnawing fear of death. She repeated over and over again that she wasn't going to survive. Rick tried to reassure her, but he was acutely aware that her chances of survival were rapidly diminishing with each passing second. He fervently prayed aloud for divine protection from the shark, for a safe arrival at the shore. He feared that at any moment, he might witness the dreaded fin of a shark slicing through the water towards them, or feel a sudden pull on his legs as it dragged him underwater. Nevertheless, he was resolute, determined to reach dry land. As they neared the beach, Nicholas waded into the water up to his neck, took Yada from Rick, and guided her onto the beach. She was fading in and out of consciousness from the severe blood loss. Her wound, having bled so much, was no longer bleeding profusely. As they laid Yada on the sandy beach, a 23-year-old Londoner, Joshua Craddock, dialed emergency services. He had witnessed the entire harrowing rescue, marveling at Rick's incredible courage as he dove into the blood-tinged sea. They hoisted Yada onto an impromptu stretcher made from a beachgoer's kayak and carried her up the trail to the road. Yada's friends, paralyzed by the shock of the situation, did not contribute much to the rescue efforts. They left it to strangers and passers-by to assist their friend. Tearfully, they observed their bikini-clad friend being hauled from the sea, drenched in blood, missing an arm. Upon reaching the street, a police officer fastened a tourniquet around Yada's shoulder. Her consciousness was slipping away, her breathing grew shallow, her heartbeat faint. Then, she ceased breathing altogether. Immediately, high school teachers Rick and Nicholas commenced CPR. Yada's friends could only stand there, watching the desperate efforts to save their friend until an ambulance arrived and rushed Yada to Maui Memorial Medical Center. Rick and Nicholas paid a visit to Yada at the medical center 2 days later. Doctors informed them she was in stable condition, kindling hope that Yada might survive. But her health deteriorated drastically 2 days later, and she was put on life support. Tragically, 1 week after the attack, Yada succumbed to her injuries, despite the best efforts of the doctors. Her family fondly remembered Yada as a vivacious, cheerful young woman. She was described as beautiful and resilient, forever to be remembered with a laugh on her face. Rick and Nicholas pondered over the horrific attack, revisiting the traumatic experience in their minds repeatedly and praying for Yada's recovery. Nicholas was plagued with self-doubt, questioning if he had done enough. He pondered over whether he should have joined Rick in the sea to help bring Yada in, or donned his fins to expedite her journey to the shore, saving invaluable time. Nicholas confessed that the incident had deeply affected him. He still enters the water but no longer ventures far from the beach. The tragedy of such a young life lost was felt acutely by all. For those involved in the rescue, the event is likely to remain a vivid, haunting memory for the rest of their lives. On the 21st of May, 2023, in New Jersey, as spring began to transition into the warmth of summer, young surfer Maggie Drozdowski and her friend Sarah O'Donnell seized the opportunity to hit the waves. After securing their surfboards to their legs, they eagerly sprinted into the ocean and paddled away from the shoreline at the 110th Street Beach in Stone Harbor. The afternoon was delightfully sunny, perfect for a surf session. However, the day was soon to take a chilling twist. Stone Harbor, nestled at the southern extremity of New Jersey, draws thousands of tourists annually. Located 30 miles south of Atlantic City, the charm of its pristine sandy beaches, exhilarating sailing expeditions, quaint downtown shops, and exceptional surf captivates visitors. Maggie and her family had journeyed from Chester County in Pennsylvania, 90 miles northwest of the harbor. The surf was inviting, and the two 15-year-old friends reveled in the thrill of the waves and the splendor of nature. Unbeknownst to them, however, they were not alone. As they surfed the waves, an unseen predator was stealthily closing in, drawn to the surface activity. Suddenly, a towering wave dislodged Maggie from her board. Submerged, she emerged, frantically searching for and clutching her surfboard, leaving her lower body vulnerable in the water. As she attempted to hoist herself back onto the board, an unexpected force seized her left foot. A creature, both powerful and unyielding, had clamped onto her, dragging her beneath the water surface. The frantic struggle for air strained Maggie's lungs to their limit as the formidable pressure on her lower leg escalated. She battled to dislodge the animal, thrashing her leg and kicking defensively. A muffled scream echoed beneath the waves. bubbles escaping her mouth as she endeavored to resurface. Through the water, she glimpsed slivers of sunlight beckoning her upward. Desperation fueled her to escape the relentless downward pull, but the creature's grip was unyielding. Eventually, after what seemed an eternity, her foot slipped free from the shark's jaw and she propelled herself to the surface. Breathing in deeply, she cried out to Sarah, who quickly paddled over. Panicking and shouting, she relayed the horrifying encounter, urging Sarah to immediately head for the shore. Maggie, wounded and afraid, mounted her surfboard, her hands vigorously pulling through the water. A blood trail leaked from her injured foot, a tantalizing lure to other nearby sharks. Despite the imminent danger, the two girls painstakingly made progress toward the beach. With every passing minute, Maggie's adrenaline spiked as thoughts raced through her mind. Was the shark still lurking? Were they being pursued? Would they safely reach the shore? With her injured foot incapacitated, Maggie had no choice but to paddle the entire distance, despite the pain. Progress was painfully slow, the beach seeming to recede into the distance, her arms screaming in protest against the exertion. Despite the sting of salt water in her eyes, Maggie's sole focus was to escape the water as rapidly as she could. She was oblivious to the extent of the damage to her foot, prioritizing survival over any immediate self-examination. After an excruciating 4 minutes of intense paddling, the girls finally reached the shallows, leaping off their boards and running onto the beach, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. They had survived, unbeknownst to them then, a shark attack. Sarah had underestimated the severity of her friend's injury, assuming it to be the work of a crab or some other lesser creature. The thought of a shark attack hadn't crossed her mind, let alone the grim possibility of a fatal encounter. However, inspecting Maggie's wound, they soon grasped their incredibly close call. The grim realization dawned upon them. Maggie had been bitten by a shark, yet they could only speculate about the species and size of the predator as they hadn't seen it. There were no visible signs, no warnings, and no time to brace themselves for the attack. Sharks often examine their prey with an initial bite before realizing that humans are not their usual food, and they usually depart. Yet all too often, this initial bite can prove fatal due to significant blood loss. Only when they were safe on land did Maggie begin to truly feel the pain from her wound. Her deep cut stung, and her lower leg throbbed. They needed immediate medical attention, as a shark bite can lead to rapid infection. The girls quickly wrapped the wound in a towel, with Sarah assisting Maggie back across the beach towards her family. Her foot and calf were marred with deep lacerations, blood seeping from the open wounds and staining the sand. The blood loss was so extensive that Maggie feared she might lose her foot. Emergency services were promptly called, and volunteer firefighters were the first to arrive. They tended to Maggie's wound, attempting to stem the blood flow. She was then transported on an ATV across the sand and transferred to an ambulance headed to Cape Regional Medical Center. While there, she received 6 stitches to close her wounds. Although the girls hadn't seen the shark, the Southern Regional Medical Examiner of New Jersey confirmed that the injuries were consistent with a shark bite. Traumatized by the attack, Maggie confessed her newfound fear of re-entering the water, acknowledging her lucky escape. It would be a considerable time before she'd be seen on her surfboard again. Temporarily confined to crutches, and with her foot heavily bandaged, Maggie sought to share her story in hopes of raising awareness among other beachgoers and surfers. Her attack occurred shortly after 2 men were bitten while fishing in the Florida Keys. Although Stone Harbor's beaches remained open post-attack, officials urged people to be particularly vigilant and take precautions such as removing reflective jewelry and steering clear of fishing areas. Shark attacks in New Jersey are extraordinarily uncommon. Since record-keeping began, only 16 attacks have been documented, with the previous one dating back to 2006. Gavin Naylor, the director of the Florida Program for Shark Research, pointed out that one is 200 times more likely to drown than to be bitten by a shark. As for shark attacks in the United States, Florida holds the unfortunate title of being the world's shark bite capital.